Good morning and welcome to our webinar. Our subject is resin inventory management, making the switch to sensors and cloud software, and our presenters are from BinMaster. I'm Jim Kalari, Editorial Director of Plastics Technology Magazine, and I will be your moderator. We have two speakers from BinMaster today. Scott Hudson is Executive Vice President of Sales and Marketing. Scott is passionate about using technology to make customers happy. He's a visionary, passionate about creating new products that make life easier for people at their workplace. Scott is all about understanding what the industry needs to solve their inventory challenges. Scott will be joined today by Nolan Fast. Nolan is UI UX designer, customer experience manager. His mission is to deliver the user experience customers want. Nolan has a natural knack for making things intuitive, clean, and easy to understand. He makes the customer journey a trip they can look forward to. Their talk will be followed by a Q&A. Please feel free to ask questions at any point during the presentation by typing in your query in the panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll ask as many questions as time allows following the presentation. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jim. Welcome everybody to the ResinView webinar here, and I want to start off with just a couple things here. We have handouts available of all the slides that you see. If you go up in the right-hand corner, there's handouts. There's also a poll that we'd like everybody to answer if you got time, and just to get up in the right-hand corner of the webinar. And if you give us a quick answer there, we really appreciate that. And with that, I'll get started. So who are we? You know, we're Garner Industries, even though we present ourselves as BinMaster. We're a division of Garner Industries. We're located in Lincoln, Nebraska. We started in 1953 as a tool and die maker, making plastic injection molds. And since then, we've grown to be more of a manufacturing and a level sensor company. So we do custom manufacturing on the Garner Industry side, and we do level measurement on the BinMaster side. And all of that started about in the 1960s when a local bin company came to us and said, hey, look, we'd like you to make us a little level switch to put in there. And we made our first diaphragm switch, and we're continuing to make that diaphragm switch today. And it's still one of our top sellers in quantities for our company. We have a great location here in Lincoln, Nebraska, over 115,000 feet. As I said, we still do injection molding today and machining. Most of the injection molding is not for BinMaster, it's actually for custom customers. And then we make the bin manufacturing line of instruments. We'll talk about the software, but one of the things we want to highlight is just that we do have our own in-house developers that make all the software you see here that we'll demo later. And we don't actually outsource it. And I think that's a good thing because that allows us to control our own outcomes on that. So as I said before, we are an injection molder, and it's probably a little bit hard to see on the screen, but kind of on the right-hand side of this picture, you can see our silos. Those are our silos out behind our plants. And we use ResinView ourselves. Our purchasing manager, Jeff Bowles, who manages all the resin for our manufacturing of the custom injection molded products, uses ResinView to manage the levels inside the silos on a daily basis. And we go to him and ask him questions like, hey, what would you like to see? And what improvements can we do? We also do that all the time with our customers where we ask them, hey, what improvements would you like to see within the software? And we try to incorporate those where we can. So it's not just us, trying to guess what to do. We actually use this and do it on a daily basis. Within the presentation today, we'll go through a quick demo of the software. We'll talk about how you can manage multiple silos at multiple locations. We'll talk about what sensors are best to use for resins, how you can save a little bit of money on your installation. And then at the end, after we go through the demo, we'll talk about a little bit what the system will cost. So why would you want to use ResinView? What are some problems that you guys might come across? One of the big things to consider is safety. Really, in today's world, nobody wants to have a lost time accident on the site. So stopping people from climbing bins is a good way to prevent that. And just, nobody wants to have an accident. So if you have this being measured, nobody has to go up and look inside the silo and try to figure out what the levels are. You can do that, from your desk instead of having to go outside, especially in the wintertime, especially in Nebraska. You don't want to do that. Another thing that you get in a lot of times is you get inaccuracies and errors, and really what that boils down to is that you're doing this manually. And a lot of times if you don't have anything in there measuring it, you're talking about somebody going and hitting the silo or throwing a rock at the silo or just making a guess, and then they have to write that down, and then maybe they email it, and that whole process just adds errors into whether or not your inventory levels are actually accurate. And in that process, you are wasting time and labor that could be doing something else within the company. So instead of measuring silos, you could be out there making sure that you're making more of your plastic. And then, nobody wants to run out of materials. This is something that we have an issue with, and this is one of the benefits that we as a resin manufacturer or a plastics manufacturer use constantly, is the fact that if we run out of resin, then we're not making products, right? And so the expense of running out of products could, in today's world, with all the supply chain issues that are out there with resin, could be the number one reason to be looking at this system, because you can ensure that you have resin. You can project out when you're going to run out of resin and make sure that you don't do that so that your operation keeps running. Instead of guessing and then last minute, your purchasing manager goes, hey, we're 20 tons short and we can't produce next Tuesday. This system will help make sure that you avoid that. So we talked about some of these. A couple other areas to consider is that this is all web-based. There's no reason to have to install any software into a network. So really, you can keep some of the IT departments out of this so that they don't have to worry about it. We are very secure. We do a lot of authentication to make sure that our site is secure. It doesn't cost a whole lot. We're talking anywhere from 10 to 12 cents a day to have the systems going. And we'll give you some more information about what these will cost at the end of the presentation today. Not only can we display it up in the web, but we can also get it on any local PLCs or HMI machines that you would have. And we have plenty of local display options, kind of like the one that you see on the right. That's just one of the local displays that you can get. So not only can you look at this in the cloud, but you could have this close to your silo. So if somebody wants to go over and visually see what's going on there, if they don't have access to a PC or phone to look at it, they can do that. So I'm going to quickly go through some of the sensors, and then we're going to have Nolan go through a demo of the software. So what sensors can you use in ResinView? Most of our sensors that we have are capable of being used within ResinView, but I'm going to highlight 3 or 4 here that really we see used most often when people deploy ResinView. The first is our SmartBob sensor, and this has been around since the 80s. You can think of this as a automated tape measure. You can kind of see from the slide here, there's a cable coming out of the SmartBob, and there's a weight on the end of it. And all this does is mechanically spool out that cable until it hits the material. Once the material is hit, it will spool back up. And it's counting how many feet of cable were spooled out until it hit the material, and then that tells you what the level inside the silo was. This is great because it's reliable, it always works. It's mechanical instead of electronic. So you can kind of trust that it will be there and working all the time. It's probably one of the middle price options that are available. And again, we'll show some of that here later on. The next thing to look at is radar. Particularly, we like to look at the 80 gigahertz radar. That's in the last 4 or 5 years has been very popular. It's pretty much a silver bullet when it comes to measuring levels inside of bulk solid silos. It's just highly accurate, very repeatable. There is no contact. There are no moving parts. You're starting to get a little bit up there in price, but it's still a great option for measuring resin inside a silo. The newer radars have a small beam angle. It's kind of what this is trying to show, is that it's very much directed in one location, not spread out, which makes it a little bit more accurate. The other one that we can look at, and we do this quite a bit in resins, this is probably the most popular, is we have a laser sensor that's battery powered, and wireless, meaning that you don't have to have any power at your silo, and you don't have to wire it up when it gets installed. It works similar to what the radar does, where it's sending down a single beam and taking a measurement, but it's using a laser versus radar. Like I said, this is a great option if you don't have any power going to your silo, you don't want to wire it up, and you want a quick, simple installation. The laser is a great thing to look at. We have a lot of devices that will help you connect all these different sensors to our gateway, which is what takes the readings from the sensors and the silos out to the cloud. I'm not going to go too depth in these, but you can just see that we have several different ways of connecting them. And this next slide, it will show you how we can do that. So whether your silos are together or separated, we have a couple different ways of doing it. You can hardwire them from the silo itself over to one of our AEHs and then get it to a gateway and then out to the cloud and then see it on ResinView. Or we have wireless devices that will go from the sensors themselves right into the gateway and then out to the cloud. And this is where I was talking about, you don't have to do a whole lot with IT, because really all we have to do is get this on the network and then connect it out to the internet, and we will then take the data from there. If there is a lot of concern about putting the gateway into the network, we could even look at cellular options. So you don't even really have to connect it in your network at all if you don't want to. It costs you a little bit more to have the cellular connection, but it can be a standalone system if you want. And that's a great option for certain locations that maybe don't have all the infrastructure. A couple things to consider. We're here long term. We're not an IoT company. We're not a software company. We're a level sensor company that's been around since 1960. BinMaster has a long tradition of creating sensors that last a long time. So we know what sensors should be installed in what applications. We're not a software company that's trying to guess, hey, is this sensor going to work in this application or not? And all our sensors have a long lifetime to them. So if you put this in, your investment's going to last a long time. When you get the subscription with ResinView, you get automatic updates to that, meaning that any new features that come out, you get them automatically. You don't have to pay anything more for them. We're always putting more features into the system, and we take, as I said before, we take the feedback from our customers and try to make improvements with that. The gentleman you see there on the screen, his name's Jake. He actually is the guy, if you're doing a chat within the system or take a call about having problems that's going on with ResinView, that's who you would talk to. And we do have a chat and a phone call or a phone center set up. So during working hours, you can call anytime you want and talk to a live person. So if you have any problems when you're using ResinView, we'll take care of you in a quick manner and make sure that you're up and running as quickly as you can be. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Nolan, who's going to give you a demo of the software. He's just going to go through different sections of the software and show you how they work and feel. And then we'll talk about pricing afterwards after that. And then if you guys have any questions, we can try to address them for you.
Appreciate it, Scott. So I'm going to switch the view here over to BinCloud. So on your screen here, this is the dashboard. And here we're looking at Garner Industries with our 3 silos. So this table here is completely customizable to what you want to see. And there are a plethora of options. So I can show you here, we do the drop down. And now we can see these are all of the options you have for what you want to see for whatever it is that you're doing. And this is customizable per user. So if one person only wants to see a few things, they can deselect a bunch of these. Or if one person needs to see more or something specific, they can have that. And when they log in, that is exactly what they will see. I'm going to add one here. So I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. So from this screen, there's a lot we can do. The little I guess I'm not sure what that icon is, but this is the filter icon. So within, say, the mass column, if you were looking for everything that was more than a certain amount, so say we're looking for everything that's over 42,000 pounds, type that in and click filter, and now we filter down so you can see that. And each one of these has a filter on it that's specific. So if it's a number, or you can filter by text, you can get down to exactly what you need to see, and then you can either click on that and clear it there, or we can just clear it from the toolbar, and everything comes right back. Another great thing we can do is if you have a group. So here, like these two are in this group, we can just grab that guy, throw it up top, and now we're grouped that way. So if there's a certain way that you need to see everything separated, you just throw that column up top and you can group by it. And then if you wanted to get really specific, I don't have another column, but I'll just throw one up there just so you can see. You could get as specific as you wanted to group your to group the rows so that you can see it how you want. I'm going to clear those out and bring it back. Another nice thing we can do that we added is this navigation panel here. If you were top level and you had a lot of sites that you were working with, and you wanted, right now we're showing all sites and we only have one set up, but you could go through and pick that site you wanted, or you could use these to cycle through. And now, again, we've only got one site on this account, so you can't really tell, but this will just cycle through your sites one at a time, so you can see them that way as needed. So now I'm going to talk about the exporting feature. So if you run like weekly reports, or you need, somebody asks for a report and they need to see it, we've got this export function here, where if I were to just click it now, it's going to export this table exactly as you see it to an Excel sheet that you can send off. Or if we do the drop down, we can go ahead and create a report. A snapshot report is going to show you what this table looked like at a very specific moment in time. So if we wanted it for this day at this time, hit set, and then we'll just leave everything default for now and generate. This is exactly what our location had, exactly what this table looked like at that given time. And then you can hit export and it'll give you exactly what you need. The other option is if we want a date range. So if you needed to see everything in between a certain time, so like if we say yesterday, we'll say now, between today and right now, this is going to give you all of the readings that came in between this time and this time. And then generally what I like to do is sort this column by vessel name. So that way when you export this, all of your rows are going to be sorted by the vessel. So silo 1, this is every reading that came in for silo 1 during that time frame. And then as you go through the Excel sheet, and there's obviously quite a bit here. Silo 2 is in there somewhere, but you understand that you get every reading in between this time and this time. So it's a pretty powerful tool. Hit export and you will get that Excel sheet. Now I want to switch over to text and email alerts. Oh, right. Almost forgot. These rows, when we expand this pops up a chart. So silo 1 and silo 2 are in a group. So both of those show up on this graph. So if you have groups of silos that have the same material in them, you can group them together and then see them all on this one chart. You can shut one off at a time so that you only see one. And then as you hover, it'll show you that reading that came in at that time. It'll tell you the mass, when you received it, and the silo name. And if you'd like to, the default is a line graph, or if you prefer, you can swap that over to an area graph. And currently we're showing mass, but if you wanted to see what the distance readings were, you just switch it over and you can see that. And then this will be showing the last 7 days or 8 days. You can switch this to whatever you'd like, and it'll update. And now we can start seeing trends. So this is really powerful if you're trying to look back to see what you've been using on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, whatever that may be. And over here, this is the information about what you're seeing here. So if there's a group, that group's information is going to be here. And so this will be a good time to transition to talking about our trucks feature. So truck space, and I'll talk about how you set that up. Truck space is how many of a specific truck can go into that vessel, and how many trucks to empty is how many you can remove from that vessel. So looking at this here, silo 1, you can do about 1.5 of this standard truck. Can't take any out. And silo 2, a little over half of a truck load can go into it, and a little under a full truck can come out. And you can set up a primary and a secondary truck for each vessel. And that can be found here under this ResinView tab. So right now we have this demo truck and a standard truck set up. You can see this one holds 50,000 pounds. It's got one compartment, so 50,000 pounds per compartment. And when we set that up, you just go ahead and you name it. Say one compartment, say it holds, you measure in tons. You want to say it's that's a lot. We'll call it a 20-ton truck. You go ahead and you assign it as the primary, and you can drill that down. You can select all vessels, or if you have a lot of silos and a lot of sites, you can drill that down to a specific site, and then this will only show you that. And we can assign it to, say we wanted to just assign that to silo 1, but then that truck happens to be also a secondary truck that like you occasionally use for a different vessel. You can come over here and pick that vessel and select it and hit submit. Now, what that means is if it's assigned as a primary, that is going to show up right here. Where secondaries come into play is when we expand this, we would also show the secondary truck that's assigned here. The other place that comes into play is our quick view. Now you can see here, this is sorted by groups. So if you set up a group here, that is going to group them onto a card here. And these four, this is the default view with mass, headspace, volume, and material height. However, each one of these cards is completely customizable to whatever you want it to be. So if there's a column on the dashboard that you want to see, it is available here, whether it might make sense or not. And you can get very specific. So if you wanted to see mass in tons, and then you wanted to see mass in pounds, whatever you want to do is an option. So we'll say, yeah, well, we'll do truck space. So in this situation, truck space doesn't have a selected unit because it's just going to display the truck. This is just grayed out, so you can't accidentally do something that you shouldn't do. And I'll do trucks to empty. The heads-up display is this pop-up right here, which is defaulted to % full, but you can select mass, height, or volume, and then we hit save. And now you can see that's updated these four options here, as well as the heads-up display. So these numbers here is an aggregation of this group. So out of this group, you can fit a little over 2 trucks in, and you could empty it with a little under 1 truck. If you need to see the specific silo, you just hover over that one silo, and it will give you that data specific to that silo. And those settings are specific to this card, and that is also specific to a user. So each user can set this up however they choose, and then you have the same options here for sorting through sites. Look at my notes real quick. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit here before I pass it back to Scott about users. Let's see who we got. So each user can have can be assigned certain sites and certain silos. So if you have one user that you want them only to focus on a certain area and you don't want them to have access to somewhere else, when you're setting up them as a user, then we can go ahead and assign them to specific vessels. and they will only be able to interact with and see those vessels, and they will not be able to change anything about anything else. Or if there's no restriction, they can do whatever they want. We just leave it at the default, no restriction, and they're good to go. Now, if you wanted to get even more specific, as you're setting up that user, we have these kind of basic roles and permissions. So if you wanted to set up a user for a very specific thing, you name it, I spelled that all wrong. You give it a name that makes sense to you. Let's see, where is it? So we'd go in here, we'd say, we'd give this person that's an ordering, we'd give them manage orders and then manage vendors. That makes sense. Manage trucks. And then that way, that user can come in, hit create role. Now this ordering role. So we come into these users. We set them as an ordering role. Now their specific permissions are what we gave them and none of the ones that we didn't. And then you can do multiple, oh, I was wrong about that. So you set up each user specific to what you want them to do. If you want them to do everything, you can either select most of them and filter out very specific ones, or we can just give them admin privileges. Or if you don't want them to do anything at all, just view. So if you're maybe giving this to a vendor, you can make them a viewer and they can't change or do anything. They can only see the vessels and see what's in them. So you can get very specific about who does what to ensure that nothing happens that shouldn't. You go up here. So you'll notice there is this little bell up at the top with a 0 on it. That are your notifications. So as a user, you can set up text message and email notifications that will be sent at a certain distance reading, a certain mass reading, volume, or we've also added some system health notifications as well. And I'll kind of show you what that means. So when you, as a user, you can set up an alert. The most common is going to be a vessel alert and more than likely a level alert. And so if you wanted silo 1 here in this space, you would name it something that makes sense to you. And you want to be alerted when it's below, you could say 20,000, and we'll say pounds. So you can get very specific here with all of these things, percent, mass, distance, volume, whatever makes sense for you. And as long as you're a user that has set up your phone number in your user account, you can get a text message and you can get an email. And once that vessel hits that, once the reading comes in and it's below that amount, you will get a notification. And if you'd like, you can set this as a critical alert, which changes the display that you'll see on the quick view. So that it's a exclamation point, we outline it in red, so it's very clear that there's an issue with that vessel. Now, within this pop-up, you can create multiple alerts, so you don't have to go back through and remake your selections again. So if you wanted like a medium alert and then a critical alert, you can do all that from here. And when you're done, oh, I got it.
Yeah, delete that one.
I didn't put in everything that I needed, so it's.
You have to do the who to be notified.
Oh, there we go. So you can, if you have permissions, you can select. Let's see, where's demo user? So I'm the demo user, so I can notify myself and let's see. I don't want to go accidentally set up these, but if you can set this to whoever you want and they will get that same alert. And it will be alert as everybody that you pick here will get the text and the email alert, as well as if you have this open, a pop-up will appear when the alert happens. I think that's, look at my notes, I believe that's everything I have to cover.
Talk about that we have an app.
Yeah. Okay. So we, the very new thing that we have, we do have an app that is out right now for iOS, and is that out for Android?
And for Android.
So we do have an app that's out for iOS and for Android. It's in beta right now, so if you happen to look up BinCloud on the Apple Store or Google Play, you should be able to find it, and just be aware that there might be updates coming to it as we get feedback and do some minor bug fixes. But if you get the app, you will have all of this information will be available to you within the app. You can visit this page from your phone, but if you want a much better experience tuned to the size of your phone or your tablet, I would suggest downloading the app and let us know what you think. Leave us a review, and that'll help us constantly improve that. But yeah, so iOS, go to the Apple Store, the App Store, I'm sorry. And for Android, it should be available in the Google Play Store. All right, so I'm going to switch this back over to the slides and throw this back over to Scott.
And thanks, Nolan.
Yeah.
All right, so what does this cost to implement, ResinView at your location? I'll just quickly go through this and give you some rough ideas. These aren't specific. If you really want to know what this is going to cost, reach out to us. We can make a quote for you specific to your application. But this kind of gives you a relative idea of what you would have to spend to put a ResinView system into your facility. So we talked about the free technologies. We talked about SmartBob, a non-contact radar, and then the laser. You can see their rough prices there. It's $2,000 roughly for SmartBob. It's roughly $3,000 for a radar, and it's roughly $1,500 for the laser. So you will need the sensor, but then you'll need that gateway that we were showing you, and that's another $600. So if you had, one or two resin silos and you went with the laser option, you would say, let's say you have two silos, that'd be $1,500 a piece, so it's $3,000 plus the gateway, so it'd be $3,600 to get that installation going for you on the equipment side. Then we also have a subscription, and we don't, this isn't something that we're charging you every month, and it's not a huge fee, but we do have per silo a $60 per year annual fee for using the software that we just showed you right now. So you can kind of get a rough idea of what that would cost you. Again, if you have something that you want to specifically talk about, we may need to put some wireless transmitters in there, and it just depends on how all your bins are laid out. We might need a little bit more equipment, or we might need a little less. So, if you really want to know, reach out to us. We'll get you a quote put together. We can get quotes turned around in hours. You don't have to wait days to figure out, hey, is this system going to work for me or not? We can get this back to you quickly. One other thing I would mention, if you already have some sensors on your silos and you just say, hey, I really like what the software looked like, we can work with most sensors that are already on a silo and hook up the software to our, hook those sensors up to our gateway, get it out to our software, and everything you saw already, you get access to it. We have this starter kit that we're kicking out. It has two lasers, kind of missing one here, but you can see one here and one there in the gateway. So if you have a two silo location that you want to get up and going real quick, or if you just want to try this out, we have this ResinView starter kit. It includes the gateway, two laser sensors, and it's $2,500. So you save a little bit of money there. You get 60 days of ResinView free, and then after that, it's the $60 a year per silo to measure those. So if this is something you want to get really interested in, really want to get going on it, reach out to us. We'll get a kit to you, and you guys can be up and running with ResinView within days. Again, remember, these are battery powered. You don't have to bring anything to the silo itself to get it running. The gateway could be back in your control room or back in a building. The wireless technology we're using is LoRa technology. It's got a lot of capability to go through buildings and through obstacles. It doesn't have to have a direct line of sight to the gateway. Obviously, if you have a ton of stuff in the way, it will affect it a little bit, but it can definitely go through walls. We've got one going, the one we have here is going through about 3 or 4 walls. Some of those are stacked full of resin. So it's a really strong, powerful wireless signal coming out of there. And with that, we're going to turn it over to questions, and hopefully there's some out there. And I haven't looked over there. I'm going to peek over and just see if, so I see one that says, does this work with a 3D BinMaster? So you're asking about the 3D level sensor, and the answer to that is yes, we can bring this into the 3D level sensor. In fact, you can kind of see it in this image right there. That's what we're talking about. The output for that can be put in the gateway, and then we can bring it into ResinView and do everything that we just showed in the demo. The one thing I would say is that we don't bring in that 3D graphic you get with a 3D level sensor into ResinView. There is separate software for that. When you buy a 3D level sensor, it comes with that. So we can bring it in. And in fact, one of the 3 silos we have in the back, we actually have the 3D level sensor making the measurement. And we bring that into ResinView. So we have 2 radars and the 3D level scanner on our system here in our facility. That's what we run. That's what you're seeing the data of. What are the accuracy of all 3 sensors? So they're all very accurate. You know, they're all doing. Can I go back? I think I can.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go to those real quick. They're all taking a single point measurement. So the SmartBob's just coming down and measuring here. The radar's coming straight down from here and measuring here, and the laser's doing the same thing. I guess that we don't have a picture of it. If you put a laser here, it's doing the same thing. So the level measurement, the distance measuring that it's making is very accurate. You're talking within centimeters or a fraction of an inch accuracy of the sensors, making that level sensor. Really, the only inaccuracies that come in is making sure that we have the geometry of your bins right, so that when we take that single level measurement, we turn it into a geometry, knowing how your bin looks, so that turns into a volume. If we have your densities right of your material, then that's where the math turns it into mass. So when it comes to level accuracy, it's very accurate. When it comes to mass accuracy, we can usually get it within maybe 3 to 5%. But a lot of that's us working with you to make sure that we've got it set up correctly. There's no cost for the software, like an annual fee. No, there is a cost for the software annually. It's the $60 per year per silo is what it costs to use the sensors annually. And then I see another one. We've got 5 silos are sitting on weight cells. Give out weight, man. The weight cells work in your system. Depending on the output of those silos for load cells, we're very familiar with load cells, and usually those either come out Modbus RS-45, or sometimes they're RS-232. Occasionally they're 4-20, but most of the time it's a Modbus signal coming off those load cells. If that's what you have, we could integrate that into the system. Can vendors use it for automatic ordering? Yes, if they have. So we didn't really hit this. Can I go back to sharing the screen? So when it comes to ordering, hopefully you guys can all see that. We have a little section up here. We didn't really talk about this because we wanted to show more of the level measurement, but we do have a process in here where you can create an order. You can pick what site you want that delivered to. If you have multiple sites, when you want it delivered. We don't have a vendor created, but you can create all the vendors who supply your material. Then you would pick which vessel it would go to, what material you want ordered, how much you want ordered, and then so 1 ton here. And then I'm not going to fill this all out. Who you're going to email it to? You'd hit create order. It would send it to that person, the recipients of that email. That could be your vendor, that could be your supplier, it could be internal to your company, and that's maybe your purchasing manager or purchasing department. And then they could send that out to the different places you want. We do have all the orders sitting here. If there's none in this particular one, all the orders that you would place would sit within inside this system, though, and you'd have history of that ordering. Yeah. Let's see here. Can you interface with low level or high level function? I assume you're talking about like a rotary or a vibrating rod or probe, high and low level. We don't currently have that within the software at this time. It is something we're pursuing though, and I'm hopeful that for point levels, we'll have something for that in the near future. Do you take compaction into consideration? So there is definitely, we can take compaction, as you fill up the silo, obviously the density is going to change a little bit. We have different ways of setting up the software. I'm going to switch back over here real quick. When we create vessels, this is something that you guys don't do. We set it up internally. I'm just going to show it to you so you can understand what I'm talking about. Oh, and you're the wrong user. I can't.
Here, we can show them something.
Yeah.
So when we create your materials, each one is assigned the density and a density unit, and then you decide if you want it in pounds, tons, whatever makes sense for you. And then based on the dimensions that when Jake is setting up your account, the dimensions that you have, I don't understand the math in the algorithm, but there's definitely some math being done using that density to calculate specifically what the mass is based on how much is on what the distance reading is.
Yeah, and one of the things that, and I couldn't show, we have the concept of strapping table. So if you want to, we can strap out your bin instead of using geometry. So basically saying, at 10 feet, it's this much mass, at 20 feet, it's this much mass. And so when you do that strapping table like that, you can take into any compaction into that you would want to use. Could we have a demo on SmartBob? Yeah, we'll talk about SmartBob later, but we're talking about resin here today. So I'm not sure if there's any other questions. I don't know if I missed any.
Yeah, there are a couple on my end here that came through.
Sure.
Would you say this system could the system be configured? Say, for example, if there was a purchasing manager offsite who was responsible maybe for buying material for 15 different plants, is there something for that kind of setup where he could view silos at he or she could view silos at various locations, or is this more for single plant operations?
No, this is definitely for multiple plant operations. I'm going to log in here real quick as a different user. Just take 2 seconds here. And what I'm going to show you is an account. It's not necessarily a ResinView account, but it will show you an account that has multiple locations, so you can kind of see what that looks like. And it gives a little bit more to what Nolan was talking about when it came to, moving from site to site. And just kind of seeing how things could be laid out. These guys, they're happen to be a hog producer, but they have different silos, and you can see here's all the different sites they have. So you can imagine that all these different silos are just different locations that you have resin in them. So you can quickly go through your quick view. You can filter through the site. You could say, I want to just see this site. So this could be set up so the gentleman that's running this particular site could only see this if they wanted to, or a supplier that only supplies to the site could be set up to only see this site if that's what you want them to do. And as you can see, there's multiple sites here. You can have as many as you want. Again, the quick view might be one way to do it. You can also see it from the table view, and all the features that we talked about are available either way.
Okay. And before, when you noted that you can measure distance, what exactly does that mean? You're measuring distance from where to where?
This might take the slides, so I'm going to pop back over to the slides here. So we're measuring the distance from the sensor interface, which in this case the radar is right underneath this plate, down to right below it where that material is at. In resin, one thing that's nice about resin compared to a lot of other bulk solids, it generally doesn't bridge or clump. And that's a general statement. I know that it can happen, but resin generally tends to be a lot flatter. You don't see the peaks and valleys that you get from rat holing or clumping or bridging. And so generally speaking, a measurement straight down from the sensor to the material, and that's the distance that you're measuring, is fairly accurate inside these silos because you don't see a whole lot of geometry inside the silos. Okay.
And in order to ensure as accurate a reading as possible, do you need to know the exact dimensions of the silo?
No, you don't. I would say it's helpful to know the exact dimensions of the silo. Let me go back here. Because then I switched accounts now, I logged in as an admin. I can kind of show what I was trying to show earlier on the equipment is that you can come into, and this is the geometry that you're asking about. I want to make sure I get the right one here. Here we go. This is just, we have multiple types of bin setups, so we have different geometries, but if you know that, we can fill them in, and then we can do the geometry and the math. And so this is what we were talking about before. If the sensor's here and it's measuring down to the material, we then do the math based on the geometry that's been inputted for the silo to say, hey, this is the volume that you have. However, even if you don't have this, and this is what I was talking about earlier, you can use a strapping table, and you can just say, hey, at this distance, it's so many tons. At another distance, it's so many more tons. So you can have a big table of just, hey, I don't know the geometry, but I know at these different distances, this is the mass that I should have inside that silo. So you can either do the geometry or we can do a strapping table. And I'd say it's about 50-50 with our customers. Some know the geometry enough, we can go that way. If they don't, then we use a strapping table.
Okay. And is the system set up so that you know when a delivery is made?
Correct. So that's a great one. This is a great one to show it on. So if I go to the orders here, this customer does use our ordering system quite a bit. You can see all the orders that they've placed into the system. Again, you could just realize this is feed, but it could be resin. You can see when they ordered it and what date it was delivered, whether it was canceled or not canceled. You can see when if the order status is sent or delivered or canceled. And we do change it. So these ordered sent ones will change to delivered. Yeah, like what you see here when they are actually delivered. So our software is intelligent enough to say, hey, look, we saw the bin fill. So we're going to mark that order as delivered then because we saw the delivery of that material into the silo.
I see. Okay. All right. I don't see any more questions in queue. So at this point, I would like to close by thanking Scott and Nolan of BinMaster for their informative talk. I'd like to also mention that attendees can click on the handouts tab at the top right, and you'll actually be able to download a PDF of this presentation. I'd like to thank attendees for their interaction and for their questions. This was a very engaging webinar. It was also recorded, and shortly all who registered will be receiving a link to access the recorded version on the Plastics Technology website. So please feel free to listen again or get in touch with Scott or Nolan if you have additional questions. Also, you can take that link that we're going to send you to the recorded version and feel free to forward it to any of your colleagues who could not join us this afternoon. With that, I would like to say a final thank you. And please, everyone, have a safe and enjoyable day. Goodbye.